Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're here with another segment of Meet the Candidate, and today we have in our studio Martin Jones. Martin, welcome.
Well, thanks, Bob. I'm here, and this ought to be very interesting as it's an entirely different kind of format.
Well, let's try by letting our viewers know a little bit about who Martin Jones is, where you were brought up,
Okay.
education, what
Okay.
you've done for your career.
Well, I was born, I grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up in South Los Angeles, on 56th Street, between Budlong and Vermont. And I went to Nativity Grammar School at 57th in Vermont. And I graduated. And from there, I went to Mount Carmel High School at 7011 South Hoover. From there, I went to Washington Adult School on 110th and Denker. And that was an enjoyable experience. It's for the first time in my education, I actually went to school with adults, and people were treated as adults and intelligent, with intelligence. That was a pleasurable experience. From there, I moved to the San Fernando Valley, but that was after the Army. And for those who don't understand what the Army is, those were the days when people were drafted. And the idea of being...
Was that the Vietnam War era?
Well, that was 1960.
Okay.
And we were involved in Southeast Asia, where places we said we weren't, as a matter of fact, but we were. And it was a very small force, but for the most part, the U.S. Army was dedicated to the defense of Europe. You know, the big communist Russian bear was going to come and get us, which they never did. But anyway, somewhere along the line, I did, in fact, move to the San Fernando Valley. After I went to El Camino College, junior college, now community college they call them, in Torrance. And that was 1 year there as a freshman. Then they changed the district lines, and I went to Los Angeles Harbor College at the end of Vermont Avenue. So it's pretty hard to get away from Vermont. But LA Harbor was quite a nice school. I think the total enrollment at that time was about 800 or 900. It was like your own private school with teachers, a very small class size. It was a very nice school, and I enjoyed it a lot. But then it came time to transfer. That presented a few more difficulties. I thought about Humboldt State, and I didn't go there, and I also thought about Chico State, but I ended up going to Valley State, California State College at San Fernando Valley, which is now California State University. Well, it wasn't that big then, but it was okay, and I lived in Van Nuys for a number of years. But my parents had moved to Oxnard in 1964. Well, I moved to Oxnard in 1970. And my mother had died, and my father was still alive, so I moved to where I'd be close to my father. Well, he survived another 10 years. By that time, I was really stuck into being an active, concerned citizen, which was not a good career move. I should have, if it was money, I should have gone to Orange County and worked for a guy named Bob Solomon who built houses. But I stayed in Oxnard, and I was in real estate for many years. I was a real estate broker for 20 years, and there was never a complaint filed against me. And I'm relatively proud of that, and I actually stayed in the business that long. Usually people don't last that long. But anyway, from that, I really devoted my time, almost an obsession, to what was going on in the city of Oxnard. My first foray into trying to do something about the city's, what I consider corruption, I filed a complaint with a civil grand jury. And let it be known up front, a civil grand jury is not a criminal grand jury. A civil grand jury can investigate and make recommendations, can't do anything else, has no enforcement authority. Well, I went to the civil grand jury and gave them a box full of evidence which I obtained through the Public Records Act, or clippings, newspaper clippings, and so forth. And it did start an investigation, and they are online today. Grand jury, Ventura County. Well, they had 3 consecutive investigations, and each one was worse than the first. And what they had determined originally was the problems with the budget was because of the treasurer not following the law. Well, that was certainly true. In any event, nothing came of it. The city ignored the recommendations. And you had the reports once a year, and there were 3 consecutive years. Well, nothing happened. So I decided there must be a different route. And that meant I had to go, well, I had a lawyer. His name was Fred Roseman, and not a trial litigator, but his friend and associate, Richard Tentler, is a trial litigator. Well, I acquired the evidence. Again, Public Records Act material. And it was the city's own agendas. Well, we filed an action, a lawsuit, and we went to trial. That was like 2003 or 2004. And Judge O'Neill determined in 2004 that I won my case. Well, my lawyers got the money and I got temporary satisfaction because nothing changed. Nothing changed. It's still the same thing. And I thought, well, that didn't work too well. And I kept looking for another opportunity. And it occurred to me, there's law enforcement. I hadn't tried that. So I did try. I couldn't get any interest at the district attorney's office. That was a dead end. So I thought, well, the FBI is supposed to investigate corruption. Okay. So I went to the FBI. They got an office in Ventura on top floor of a bank. And I went there and I kept talking through this plexiglass window. I could not get out of the hallway. So I have an acquaintance who's a retired FBI director of this area. And I called him up and I told him my problems. He said, in a week or less, you will get a phone call from the present FBI director. And I said, okay. And I waited, and I did get the phone call. And I told him my story, and he said he would assign an agent. He did. And at the appointed time, I arrived at the FBI headquarters, or office, whatever it's called. And I'm in the hallway, and I thought, well, here I am again. Now, how do I get out of the hallway? Well, an agent came around the corner and said, we're going into this little conference room, very small conference room. And I start telling him what I had determined and the kind of evidence I had. And he said to me, he thanked me, he says, you know, we have to be very careful when we're investigating public officials. We don't want to ruin their reputation. I said, you're not going to ruin their reputation. They did what they did. I'm just reporting it. And he said, okay. And I said, you know, they really don't care about the reputation of a citizen, because at the time I was getting slandered somewhat, a walking nutcase, and so on. But actually, I was right. But he said, well, we like people like you. And I said, well, it gives meaning to my life. That was 2009. 2010, they go to the district attorney, who was Greg Totten. And Greg Totten started an investigation. And it looked like it was a really thorough investigation. It looked like somebody was going to be indicted eventually. That was 2010. In 2011, the California Supreme Court changed the rules of the game. Up until that point, you didn't have to prove intent. It was assumed that a public official, an elected official, knew the law and knew when they were violating the law. Well, the Supreme Court, and the case was Stark versus Superior Court, 2011. And the Supreme Court of California said, no, you have to prove intent. Well, that changed the rules of the game. There were no files. They'd been shredded. They disappeared. So there was no available documents and no available witnesses. Like, who's going to testify against themselves? So that was the end of the investigation. But then the district attorney issued a report in 2012, and it's online. And it's worse than I thought it was. But the report goes into conflict of interest, embezzlement, payoffs, bribes, the whole works. The district attorney, not being able to prove intent, turned it over to the FPPC, and the FPPC fined Mayor Holden $10,000, Brian McDonald, I think, a council member, $3,000, and a few other people. But when this happened, when the DA dropped the case, the search warrants became public knowledge. So I went to the county clerk and started looking at the search warrants. They were really fascinating. There were 34 search warrants. Judge Cloninger put his initials on every page. And I did not photocopy every page because it's 50 cents a page. I'd go broke. One file was 700 pages. So I made selections of the pages. When I got to Mayor Holden's, I stopped because that was just too good to be true. I especially liked how he told the investigators when he was interviewed as to how he barely knew this man Huberman, who was running the MRF, the recycling center in Oxnard, and barely knew the man just as a friend. Well, that's some friend, because Mayor Holden, mayor of the city of Oxnard, married Huberman and his fiancée in Acapulco, Mexico. I've wondered how it is that a mayor of a city marries someone in a foreign country. But Mayor Holden did that. But he also denied any real responsibility for the way the city council voted on contracts. As he said during the first interview, that I'm just one of five. But he did not point out that he always had two other votes with whatever he wanted, because it was back scratching. Those three guys would get whatever they wanted from the other two. But anyway, Mayor Holden goes home and discovers that he needs a lawyer. So he lawyers up and asks for a second interview, whereupon he goes back to the district attorney and the investigators and says, in effect, I lied to you. That was the best part. Anyway, I had these pages photocopied, and I went to my lawyer, Fred Rosenman, and I said, would you photocopy these things and put them in email? And he did. With the email, I sent out an email blast of some of these pages. And lo and behold, the three musketeers, or the unholy trinity as they were referred to, were not re-elected. So that was one time I felt I had a success. Since then, there hasn't been that many opportunities, but I do regularly go to the city council. They are taped. Anybody can see them. I generally almost always speak during public comments. I have been told that I have good suggestions. I believe I have helped make some, help the city council go in a proper direction to the benefit of all the citizens, not just special interest groups or special friends. And I will say, there are people today that want to privatize the city of Oxnard's affairs. Well, first of all, that's a bad idea. You don't want to put utilities, say, in the hands of a for-profit company. That's a bad idea. But in the past, the city had privatized the city of Oxnard through the sole source contracts and no bid contracts. What they did, that is, members of the city council, made their friends rich. So the city had been privatized in the past in a way that made special friends rich, and now we've got people running for office that want to do a different way of privatizing, which is, in my view, bad for the citizens of Oxnard. At present, I am running for the Harbor Commission, the Port of Hueneme. I am concerned about the way the fees collected, how they are spent. I don't think, it's my belief that the people there on the commission, I think two of them are controlled they're not aggressive. One man I respect highly is close to 90. I don't think he's capable really anymore for aggressive accounting. Another woman, a woman I know on the commission has I think a conflict of interest. She works for one of the shipping companies. So I would like to be on the commission and in a position where I can examine how the fees are being spent. So that is my goal in November, and I think I have a background of where I've proven that I'm pretty good at investigating and finding things that might be a problem for the citizens of Oxnard, and I'd like to change that. Thank you for your time.
Well, you know something, Martin? I think that people who don't know you are going to get a much better understanding of who Martin Jones is, and we want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your vision.
One other thing, as far as education, I got a degree, it's in philosophy. I have a bachelor's degree in philosophy, and it's actually a pretty good preparation for analyzing and looking at things. Thank you very much.
Well, good luck to you on November 8th.
Thank you.